Hey folks, we'll wait a couple of minutes here as we're trying to let everybody come on board. I'm going to share my screen with our friendly disclaimer here at the beginning, and maybe if this will work, there we go. But my goodness, it's nice to be back with you, Rynda. It's been quite a while for me, you know?
That's right. Yeah, miss working together with you on
I
this.
know, yeah. Well, there was so much going on with being up at NACAC, and then before that, something else came up. I think I had a workshop that I was doing at a uh, for one of the schools. And my goodness, lots and lots of things happening. But hey, folks, we welcome you tonight. The few, the mighty, whoever we've got this evening, will be excited to do that. As this disclaimer shares with you every time we get together, please realize we're going to do our best tonight to give you solid advice, but we are not here in the business of giving you tax, legal, or in investment advice. I want to be very clear on that. And in those cases, you really do need to seek out advice from a professional in those particular areas. Okay, so just be super duper careful about that. We're really passionate about the College Aid Pro tool, specifically the MyCAP tool, and just all the fantastic things they can do to help you and your family when it comes to this college process. And specifically right now, as we're dealing with all these seniors that are scrambling to get applications done and starting to work on these financial aid forms, which just opened up. But Rynda, why don't we do a quick intro here? Let me stop sharing my screen, and you can start by telling everybody a little bit about yourself.
All right. Hey guys. Well, if you've been on office hours with us before, you're gonna be bored for the next 2 minutes. So just plug your ears or something. I'm Rynda Wilk. I'm one of the pros here at College Aid Pro, and I have a background as a financial planner and later as a financial coach. And a long time ago, I decided my goal was to become an expert at some area of financial planning. And while this isn't a traditional area of financial planning, it is, I think, very fitting that I looked around me and listened to all the people I was working with and realized that the best way I can help families is to help them get their kids through college. And the best way I can help young adults is to help them get through college without, making unfortunate, uninformed decisions. And I also have two children, one who is a senior in high school this year, probably like many of you have. And I also have a sophomore in college. And so I'm right there with you in the process and in the trenches of trying to figure these things out with my kids. So I completely understand that struggle as well as a parent.
Excellent. Thank you, Rynda. And my name is Dan Bissig. I've been an independent educational consultant for 17 years. And I'm a little bit unique in the fact that my practice has always revolved around both the college money talk as well as the admissions, helping families with every aspect of admissions, career identification, college selection, all that kind of good stuff. So, needless to say, right now I'm in the thick of it. We all are, as we're helping families navigate their way through both the financial aid forms, specifically CSS Profile, which is opened up right now, and then, in my case, helping with essays and applications and all that kind of good stuff, trying to get them across the finish line. But prior to that, so that's 17 years as an IEC and 25 years as a financial planner. Super glad to be with you all this evening. Feel free to put your questions into the Q&A section for us. Don't put it into chat. In fact, I'm not even sure if chat's running right now. It doesn't look like it is, which is okay. But put that in the Q&A, and then Rynda and I are going to spend some time trying to answer these questions for you this evening. So, Rynda, you want to take the first one that popped in here?
Absolutely. All right. This question is from someone who is a sole proprietor. They say the money I make shows under income, but for the new FAFSA, do I have to include my business checking account under assets? No, it's not going to ask you for the individual components of your business financials, but it will ask you for I think the wording is the net worth of your business. You can think of it kind of as the value of your business. And as we've been, telling people this year, make sure you don't overstate that. If you're, if you got hit by the proverbial bus tomorrow and your business is suddenly worth almost nothing, or maybe you've got something in a checking account, but you've got some accounts payable on the books and that kind of a thing, make sure you don't overstate the value of that business. The value could be zero for a lot of sole proprietors.
Yeah, and by the way, it is really interesting, isn't it, uh, that this is the first year that the FAFSA has required that, where you got to put down some kind of an evaluation for the business. So, as Rynda said, make sure that you do your homework,
Yeah.
because it's pretty easy to put down too high a sale, or too large a value, I should say. In fact, that really lends itself to this next question that came up here, which is, how do you calculate the quick sale method of your home? Is there a formula? And what I would say to you is this. I mean, we normally suggest that you come up with at least some kind of a value of your home, and then think of it, if you had to sell it like a fire sale today, you needed to get out of it, you needed to take the cash. How is that going to work? That's where you're using a 15 to 20% of that value. Of course, it's what the house is worth less the amount that you still own the house, to come up with your equity position there. But that's what we're talking about in that particular case. And so that should work. And by the way, if you Google that in the IRS, there is a conversation that takes place about that as well, the IRS quick sale method. Okay.
All right. Okay, my daughter is applying early action for her college, which is, I guess the due date is October 15th. The college tells me that the deadline for CSS is March 31st. I don't understand how this works. Shouldn't we get the acceptance letter along with the financial information? Should I send the CSS along with the EA application? So, you don't always get your financial award with your acceptance letter. It usually comes after the fact, but there's no reason you can't go ahead and submit the CSS. And I encourage you to do that. I mean, for one thing, get it over and done with, and then you can forget about it. But also because some of these schools that give aid, they don't have an unlimited amount. So getting submitting the CSS is kind of like submitting your request for need-based aid. And in some cases, it puts you in the pool for merit aid as well. So go ahead and get it done as early as you can conceivably, reasonably do it, and be done with it.
Yeah, just realize, by the way, everybody else is in the same boat, whether it's EA, ED, whatever. In fact, that leads to the next question that's coming up here, kind of a similar situation, but everyone's going to fall into the same challenge right now of the pressure to get these applications submitted, while the colleges on the other side are, also in a kind of a pickle because the CSS profile is open, but of course the FAFSA is not going to open until sometime in December at the earliest. And so, just the challenges that creates with you. Okay, this next question is, it says, my senior's applying ED to Penn and regular decision to a few other schools. I know I need to submit the CSS for Penn as well as some of those RD schools. When I submit it again for the RD schools in January, do I need to revise my CSS? The amount of dollars in my bank account might have changed. And I get that, what they're asking in this case is this: whenever you're submitting, or excuse me, completing the financial aid forms, whether it's the CSS or the FAFSA in the future, it's based on your tax return from 2 years prior. So that's your income numbers that you're putting in and the taxes that you paid. But it's based on the value of the assets on the day that you complete the form. And so, this could be either a positive or a negative to you, in the sense that, yeah, you could go in there if your account values have gone down. Yeah, you can absolutely go in there and drop those numbers. But I've actually seen this, and Rynda, I don't know if you have, where I've had a family come back and the college suddenly raised a question about, well, why are the values in the FAFSA not matching up to the CSS profile values? So I do think you have to be careful about that, and you may discover that what you're going to have to do is have a follow-up conversation with them about what's going on. Obviously, we hope the number went down, not up, because if the number went up, that also means that your student aid index number increased. But in general, I don't see a problem with if your amount, went down, that you reduce it. What are your thoughts on that, Rynda?
I was gonna go in and remind myself because I know the FAFSA, you don't go in and make changes, you just take out some schools and put in other schools.
That's right. Yeah.
And so will the CSS allow you to go in and actually make changes?
Well, it does allow. So it's interesting. This last year, the CSS allowed for changes to be made, and
Okay.
so yeah, I don't know. That's going to be interesting to see how that all shakes out. Then we may have to
I,
stay tuned on that one a little bit.
yep, for sure. All right. Okay, let's see. I'll make sure I'm not reading the same one that we just did. My son recently was awarded his Eagle Scout rank. That's great.
Hmm.
Congratulations. He will definitely list scouting and activities, but should the Eagle Scout rank be mentioned in activities or honors awards or both? I'm going to leave this one to you, Dan, because
Yeah,
this is
you got
a
it.
wheelhouse.
Yeah, so it's interesting. In the honors section, it's talking about academic honors. But doggone it, getting an Eagle Scout is pretty phenomenal, in my opinion. And if there's a spot open, I say put it in both. I really do. What I see is I also see students that do this with National Honor Society. They're often listed in both areas. It's quite an honor to earn that ranking. And also, let's not forget that in the activity sections, the one difference is that you do have 150 characters to then describe what the student did. What was their not only earning all the badges and things like that, but what was their project that they actually accomplished. And if an additional detail needs to be provided, there's two ways to do it. Either some schools will allow a student to upload a copy of their resume, or there's also, don't forget, the extra writing section underneath the normal Common App essay writing section, where they can allow you to put additional information in there. There's actually two passages, one for COVID related, and then just one for extra items that you want to list. So that's what I would do. Either way, get it in there, go proud. I mean, that's just a big deal.
All right, well, I'll take the next one since I passed that one off on
All
you.
right, that's great. Go for it.
Okay, for divorced parents, joint equally shared custody with the new rule for custodial parent, the new rule is that the one who provides the most financial support is the one who is considered the custodial parent on the FAFSA. What kind of proof evidence might be required to support our determination of custodial parent? This is a big question mark. There's really not been, any kind of formula that Department of Education has put out to tell families how to even figure this out. I think it'll be interesting to see if they require proof, but I am not expecting them to require it. I mean, I'm kind of expecting that this be like a lot of things. It's on the honor system. And that being said, I think you should keep some kind of backup for how you made your determination, just in case it comes up. What do you think, Dan? This is new.
Totally agree. Absolutely, totally agree. Yeah. And, it's no different, honestly, when it comes to the valuation of your business, the valuation of your home. Although with the home, they will do a search. They'll do a zip code search on your property, and they can easily do that to check into that to verify what's going on, especially if they think you've kind of undershot the market, quite a bit. But yeah, I absolutely agree with you that I don't know how they can do it. I mean, how do you have enough people out there that are doing so? Just use the honor system. Let's put it this way: we don't want to see you guys behind, bars and jumper suits because you did something that's illegal. So just be up and up with all of that.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So for joint bank accounts with the parent and child, where the taxes are paid under the parent taxes, is that considered a parent or a child asset? So, what you're likely referring to is an account that would be a custodial account for the benefit of the child. And in that particular case, you have to know it's very similar to investment accounts that are referred to as UGMAs and UGMAs, Unified Gift to Minors or Unified Transfer to Minors, that those are considered the asset of the child. Um, Now, that being said, specifically with those joint accounts, you have to ask yourself: have you, through the years, provided, housing, or excuse me, shelter, food, clothing, transportation, all those kinds of things for your kiddos. And obviously you have. And so, could you legitimately reimburse yourself for those things based on some of that money that's sitting there, or all of that money that's sitting there for that matter? You could. But the fact of the matter is, you don't want to wait until the day that you're submitting the forms to suddenly miraculously move this money around. And once again, they're not going to ask for copies of your bank statements or your investment statements and things like that. The only thing that they will have access to, of course, is your tax returns. But just make sure that you're up and up as far as how you're handling that. And if you're going to make changes or move things around, make sure that you do it in a timely fashion.
Good deal. All right. This person asked, when will be a good time to start the CSS profile form? Right now. Does CSS ask for 2 years of tax returns? So interestingly, they will ask for your tax returns from the prior year, which for students entering school in the fall of 24 would be the 2022 tax return year. But the CSS will ask you to estimate how much you'll make this year, which I always think is a very interesting question to ask people and in the future. So, but just 1 year of tax returns, unless I'm totally remiss on this, Dan.
No, that's right. I mean, it does. They ask you put in your 2022 numbers and then what you're showing for 2023. And also in that, what they're doing is they're trying to do some projections ahead as to where you might be, even when they're doing their calculations and things like that.
Yep.
So, all right. So first time here, welcome. Glad to have you with us tonight. You just started the CSS profile. Congratulations. The recommendation from you all was only answer required questions. That is absolutely correct. Should I not disclose the financial aid we are receiving for high school? It demonstrates what we can pay. Interesting question. I mean, in other words, I guess what you're saying is because you're getting financial aid from the high school where they're helping you to offset some of the increased costs. Because here's the thing, there's no doubt on that form that they do ask you to put down, if you would like, the amount of tuition that you're paying for other students to go to private schools. And there's a reason for that, is because they're going to give you a credit for that. And so I'm of the opinion that well, just remember this, you're 100% in the driver's seat as to which questions you want to answer. However, just know this, if you accidentally hit a question, you cannot go back and change it other than yes or no in many cases. Once it's there, it's there. You don't have the ability to be able to remove it back to it having no impact at all. So if you think that providing that kind of valuation or the numbers in there will help your situation, then you could put it in there. You have any other thoughts on that, Rynda?
No, you did a good job on that, Dan.
Okay.
Okay, let's see. If you had higher income than usual in 2022, your tax return due to one-time unusual capital gains. Okay, what can you do about it, if anything, when filling out the FAFSA and CSS profile? Well, really what you can do about it comes during the appeals process. After you've gotten your admittance letters and you've gotten your financial award letters and you sit down and compare them side by side, this is something that you can go back to the schools that you're interested in with an appeal to say, hey, I know it looked like I made all this money in 2022, but it was a one-time thing. Here's what happened in 2023. It's not going to be repeated. It wasn't like that in the years prior, and ask for, them to give you a better deal, basically. There's a right and the wrong way to do that. You probably wouldn't want to say exactly how I just said it, word for word. But yeah, you can definitely ask them to take that into consideration. And some schools would probably be willing to do that.
Yeah, that all professional judgment. We love that professional judgment, right?
That's
Uh,
right.
and here's the thing, it's really interesting with this new form, with the new FASVA, the rollout that's taking place, is that now everybody's supposed to be able to appeal if they need to. And so this is a perfect example of where you're going to need to have that kind of a conversation with that financial aid officer because your circumstances were indeed a one-time case. We see this sometimes happen with someone that's had an IRA rollover again, right? Or, maybe there was some other kind of an event that took place. Maybe there was an estate that was closed or something like that. But again, it's all about the process of communication and documentation. Got to have the documentation to prove it all.
That's right.
So, all right, next question here. So this is just a follow-up from a prior one. My business is a service business, so would the checking account basically be the value? Yeah, it really would. I mean, in that particular case, whatever the value of your business account is, that's probably what you're going to put down, less any expenses that that you have coming up. I can definitely relate. Actually, Rynda and I both can relate to that kind of situation as far as what would go down for that. So,
Yep.
okay.
Okay, I didn't realize, sorry, I'm reading this question because I'm a little bit confused. I'm going to skip that one. Do you see that next one,
Yep,
Dan?
that's fine. Yep, go for it.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that is. Could you talk about the FAFSA changes and the new date when it will be released? I would love to be able to talk about that so much, wouldn't you, Dan?
I would too.
Unfortunately, we don't have a date yet. I just got an email from the Department of Education in the past week where they're again like, trying to get everybody excited and to get ready for FAFSA season, but it still just says in the month of December. So we don't have a date.
Yeah, and by the way, throw on top of that the fact that the federal government thankfully was the shutdown was avoided at least for what 42 days or whatever it is, whatever the number is. Let's hope and pray they get that resolved so that it doesn't happen at the time when all this stuff is supposed to be going live. That would be an absolute mess,
Yeah.
for all kinds of reasons. Oh, here's a question that came up, which is, does it make sense to move 529s from a parent to a grandparent before December the 1st? It may, you have to understand your own circumstances. Just know this, when people start moving money around, one of the first things I always say to them is, have you run your student aid index off of your income alone? And why that's such a critical step is it may be a moot point for you to move money out of a 529 plan that the parents own and move it to the grandparents because your income may put your student aid index at or above the cost of a particular college. And so before you scramble and make that happen, run your numbers, make sure that you're using the MyCAP software so that you can see what that looks like, and then compare that to the colleges that your student is considering. And then, yes, if it's a situation where your SAI amount is below the price tag associated with the colleges, then it may make sense to look at those. I mean, it's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful opportunity to move those parent-owned 529s to grandparents, but make sure that you talk to your financial planner and also make sure that you take into consideration truly the health of that grandparent, because that really could have an impact too, so do your homework.
All right. You all often mention applying to competing schools to potentially play offers against each other. This is also for that appeals process I was talking about earlier. However, if one school is significantly more expensive than its competitor, is it still worth applying to it to try to negotiate later? Ideally, the schools that you're using this strategy on would be in the same ballpark from a cost perspective. The only thing I can think of is if the more expensive school actually accepted your student and gave them such a nice offer that they were going to be cheaper than the competitor, that might be make for a good appeals case. But ideally, you're looking for schools that are kind of apples to apples.
Perfect. Yep. Totally agree. All right. Next question. How's it going to work for colleges to get aid letters out in such a short period of time from FAFSA submission to the commitment date of May the 1st? Great question. Can you imagine what they're all thinking right now? I mean, every one of these financial aid offices are going to be scrambling over the holidays. They're likely going to be, coming back early because they're going to have to. than when they might have had their normal extended time. So they're probably going to be taking more time up front than they are later on. But there is no doubt it's going to be a scramble for some of these schools. And then families have to sit back and make a good comparative decision, as far as what's going on. By the way, don't forget that that's one of the huge advantages to the MyCAP software is that you've got the ability to upload those financial aid offers into the system. And I want to be very clear, assuming you are really, really good about making sure that the income and asset details that you put into your to your portfolio when you set it up, your profile, excuse me, that's the right P that I'm looking for, the profile, and also the academics for your student, that then the system can use those data points and it can compare it to that financial aid offer. And then based on that, hopefully it'll put you in a good light of deciding whether or not you should indeed go and appeal or ask, for additional money based on your circumstances. So make sure that you're prepared for that. It's a dynamite tool that's in there that really comes to light in the spring. That's when it's really going to be a benefit to you to have that.
That's right. All right. Okay, this person says, if I know I won't qualify for need-based aid per your software, can I wait to fill out the CSS profile? Well, here's the thing. If you're applying to schools that offer merit aid and they required the financial aid forms to be on file before they will consider your student for merit aid, that could really backfire on you. So that's the biggest thing I can think of as a reason not to wait on filling out the CSS profile. It's really school by school and what their deadlines are for merit aid and for the application, etc., and how those can all be different. And I'm not explaining this very well, Dan, but do you have anything to add to that?
No, I mean, you're absolutely right. It's something you've got to watch out for sure. I get it. You're sitting here saying, well, why do I want to fill out this document that's super duper intrusive and it's going to ask all kinds of stuff that I really don't want the colleges to know about me? Um, we always talk about the fact that we think you have to have a backup plan for the what ifs. The what ifs in life are that and I've seen it in 17 years. I've seen parents become disabled, die, lose their jobs, lose their businesses. And when those things happen, suddenly the funding mechanism for college might have just dried up. And there are colleges that will not provide specifically because of this CSS profile institutional aid unless you've shown a history of doing something like this, and filling out that form. I also think too that for some families, yes, it makes sense that you could wait for the FAFSA, which you're going to have to wait for anyway this year, but that you could wait even into the January timeframe or whatever if you decide that you're going to take out the loans, and that's definitely something come into play. So on top of that, you do have to kind of weigh, and this is not a fun conversation to have, but whether a college is need aware or need blind. And that's where you just need to do your Google searching. I mean, you just need to type in, is blank school need aware or need blind, and see what comes up in that particular case. And that may also have a bearing on whether you decide to submit those forms too. Don't forget, you can be selective about the colleges that you send it to. And I think that that's probably the best part too, isn't it, Rynda? Is that, if you know a school is need aware and you really want to increase your students' chances, then maybe you're not going to send in that CSS profile. So anyway, all right. Is it true that merit-based financial aid is given to EA or ED applicants only? Well, I'll just say that up front. No, that's not the case. I mean, Georgia Tech does not give merit-based aid to regular applicants. For students who are unable to submit their EA to so many colleges, this is not fair. Thank you. Yeah, I understand your concerns, your frustrations there. I mean, Georgia Tech is one of those schools that requires you to submit your FAFSA and your CSS profile. Plus, they have a Georgia Tech financial aid form that has to be submitted for scholarship consideration. And ironically, I was just the other day, I was on the Common App with one of my students, and this thing for UNC Chapel Hill came up, which was they've got these things called special opportunity scholarships. And don't you know, it says right at the top, most scholarships at Carolina have requirements regarding financial need. All students who submit the free application for federal student aid and CSS profile by the priority deadline of March the 1st are automatically considered for these scholarships. Now, notice I did say financial need. So, that goes back to the fact that families have to realize that that could be a component, that's coming into play there. Um, but I guess my comment would be, I hope and pray that the student has way more than just Georgia Tech on their list, and that there's going to be plenty of other opportunities of schools that are going to reward them. So,
All right. So for honors, do you recommend lumping all marching band accomplishments separately or lumped together? Multiple state and regional titles, national semifinalist,
this is an application question. I'll take it.
Yep, go for it.
Yeah. So, you know what? I think it depends on the situation. Is it the same band? I mean, if it's the same marching band that's had these accomplishments, and by the way, are these accomplishments for the individual, meaning that the student got like top brass student or something like that? But I see you're putting here multiple states, regional titles, national semi. I mean, this is quite an accomplished band program, and I get it. By the way, it's hard to stuff all of that into 150 characters. Where there might be an opportunity is there a way to separate out something different? Like, is there solo and ensemble, or is there, that type of thing? Remember again, if it's too much to squeeze in there, use the extra section, which is below where the Common App essay is, and or again, have the student look at uploading their resume with all those types of things, because I mean, they should be proud. That's quite an accomplishment to be part of a band program that's received those kinds of things. So that would be my recommendation is, give them everything that you've got as far as all those kinds of details so that they really just realize what a terrific student you have.
And I'll just mention again, if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the Q&A and not in the chat, and then because we're following kind of going one by one in the Q&A.
Yeah.
And someone's asking, are you taking questions live? And putting them in the Q&A is us taking questions live. If you mean like, can you speak them
To us?
your microphones are not on, so
Yeah, right.
yeah, you'll have to type it in. Sorry about that. All right, can you clarify if pre-tax retirement contribution 401k 403b on W2 box 12A DE, oh boy, this is getting very technical, self contribution not from the employer are no longer added back and reported as parents' income? Your software's instructions looks confusing. Yeah, the instructions are confusing, and I have pointed that out myself, but they come directly from the FAFSA. So hopefully they'll have a better description when the new FAFSA rolls out, or a better way for you to know how to answer that question. But the answer is you no longer add back your contributions to your pre-tax retirement accounts through your employer.
Woo-hoo! Love that. Yeah, that's huge, isn't it?
Yep, that's
Because
awesome.
in the past, I mean, talk about stinging somebody. Here you're trying to save, you're being forced to make a decision. I'm going to fund my retirement or I'm going to fund college, but either way, the college is taking my money and saying that I can use it.
Yep. Yep.
So yeah, that was a big deal. Big deal. Okay. I take care of my older parents and have money in my savings account, which they gave me for this care. How can I address this as this increases my assets? Yeah, I get that. That's a tough call. That's where you're going to have to do professional judgment. You're going to need to have a conversation with the financial aid office. Now you're going to have to be able to document it again. Is there some way that you can show how much was, given to you? Because basically they've gifted you money. That's the way that I assume that's the way that it worked. And whether or not there's even any gifting things, that's way past our conversation we can have tonight. But the point is, you need to be able to then have that conversation with the colleges that are making the short list of your student, just specifically financial aid offices, so that they're not taking that against you if possible. Now they may not have an opinion, or excuse me, may not be able to do anything about it because it is in your account. Okay, just want to be very clear about that. It's similar to a situation that happens when somebody sells a house and has the money sitting there to buy the next house. Unfortunately, that money still gets added into the formula, unless that house is going to be purchased very quickly.
Well,
But
and I would ask too, can you give it back to your parents for a
yeah, that's true too.
day so that
Yeah,
you
at least for that span of time, could you give it back, right? And make that happen. I mean, that's definitely an alternative. You're right, Rynda.
yeah. Okay, for joint bank account question, non-custodial account. I think this person is going back to the question that you answered, Dan, about
Oh yeah, about the kiddos account. Yeah. Yeah, because again, remember in that I realize that's a non-custodial account, but I assume that's right, that it's the child's account where mom or dad, you're taking care of that. You're on the account as the custodian for the benefit of the child. But that again, that money, it's like a trust. If there's a trust that's set up out there for your child, even though you're managing it for them, when they get to heading off to college, that money is theirs and counts at 20% against financial aid. So just be careful.
all right. So, okay. Oh, I'm taking this one because I just threw that one off on YouTube. I hope that's okay with you, Dan.
Go for it.
I have one house, House A, that I am currently living in, and one rental house, House B. The House B has a lot more equity than that of House A. I plan to move into House B after my son enters the college. When I fill out the CSS profile or FAFSA for my son's college application, can I claim that House B is my primary residence? I mean, no, not technically, no.
Right. No.
Sorry. I think we've had this question before. And technically if you're not living in it, because you remember that assets are reported on the day you hit submit. So that's, it's something you could try to handle in professional judgment. If you can make a good case for it. That's
I don't know how you get around that because either way, you're still there's still an equity position in both properties,
Yep.
which means um, I get it which means it's going to show up on the CSS profile across the board. Um, I get what you're trying to do. You're trying to do it with a FAFSA only skull, right? But
Yep.
I don't know because you know what? Even then, well, no, that's not true because your primary residence is protected. I don't know. It sounds like a moral hazard conversation that you need to think about.
Yeah.
The only thing I can think of, you know, unless you can legitimately move there and live there for more than 6 months during the year. But even then, if it's truly a rental property, if it's generating income, then it's a rental property.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Oops, what the heck did I just do? Let me do that. Okay. In a prior College Aid Pro webinar, it was discussed a new change for FAFSA was including a significant 401k contribution. I assume that's the same thing we've talked about, which is that those 401k contributions, 403b contributions are protected now. Put as much money as you want to in your retirement accounts, folks. Save for retirement because we don't want you having to or being forced to move in with your kiddos in the future when you have to retire. So do whatever you need to there.
Just remember, I feel like there's a lot of discussion about this, that the new rule really only affects people who are contributing pre-tax. So people who are contributing in their Roth after tax, segment of their retirement account at work, it's not going to change for you because that was always included in your income. And it's
Yeah, and in fact, I mean, it's really great you brought that up because we have to mention that too, that it also is not a benefit to somebody who isn't it the SEP or a simple because that's on the front of the tax return. And anything that's on the tax return has to be reported into the FAFSA as well. And by the way, don't forget with that 401k and 403b contribution, we're only talking about the FAFSA. We're not talking about the CSS profile. They still ask, what you contribute to there, but they handle things a little differently.
mm-hmm. Yep.
I can't remember which of us is up here, Rynda. You want
I
to
don't
take that?
remember either. Similar question regarding a change of circumstances. If one parent has since lost a job since 2022, does that information go in the initial CSS, or do we wait to send that in an appeal letter? So technically there is a place you can put that in the CSS, but we don't encourage you to do that, just because let's say there's a kind of a section where you can type in other things you want the reviewer to know about you. And if you put in, I lost my job since 2022, and then you get your financial award and you go back in an appeal and say, but I lost my job and I no longer have this income, they can just say, well, I'm sorry, we knew that already. We already took that into account. So it gives you a little bit more leverage to hold that information back and to present it to them in an appeal.
Perfect. All right. If you're divorced and remarried, and the custodial parent that provides the most financial support for the child, do you show income of household, new spouses, and custodial parents, or just the custodial parent's income? Unfortunately, you show both. You've got to show both yours and the step parent's income and assets in that calculation. And part of that's because you're likely married filing joint. I mean, we hope you are, because that makes it the easiest as far as being able to transfer those documents through the new. In fact, what are they calling the thing now? It's data retrieval tool's
Data
been changed.
retrieval tool.
Well,
Oh,
but it's been changed. Yeah, it's now called the tax something or other. Here, I've got it right here. It's called the tax. Wait a minute. The Federal Taxpayer Information, the FTI, ladies and
all
gentlemen.
right.
Right
Look,
off the press. There you
you
have it.
heard it first here, folks.
Yes, you did. So
And has all the
FTI.
seats.
Yeah. So, but once again, unfortunately, both of your information has to go in there. So,
Yep.
oh, and by the way, it gets worse if you're doing the CSS profile, because then it's possible the school wants both the custodial and non-custodial parents. And if you're married again, in both cases, that's, you know, 4 parents.
Yep. Okay. Could you please confirm 401 contributions are not counted for FAFSA? Pre-tax 401 contributions, 401k, 403b are not counted for FAFSA anymore.
Yeah, perfect. That's right. Just got on, so don't know if this was answered, but I assume ED applications aren't using FAFSA since we can't fill it out until December. Also, can we fill out CSS form now? And do you recommend the YouTube video you have as the best guide? Yeah, so so it's interesting, right? Peg Kehoe on our team every year does an awesome job of a line by line of both the CSS profile and of the new FAFSA as it rolls out. So absolutely use those. That's what it's there for, is to help guide you and direct you on what you need to do. When it comes to this, the colleges that are applying, that are doing ED, you have to remember they may make their admissions decision, but they may delay their financial aid decision, depending upon what's happening there. Now, it's possible they could roll both out, but they also then could wait to kind of compare numbers until after the FAFSA is also completed. Because if you're applying with the CSS, you have to also do the FAFSA. Don't forget about that, folks. It's not an either or. It's a combination of both. That's why that is such a big deal, because it used to be, that October 1st is when, families would do the federal form. This just happens to be one of those unique years where it's being delayed. So.
All right. Does the custodial parent file under the student's login for CSS? When the non-custodial files under a different login, do they enter their address in the student section? Do you want to take this one, Dan? I haven't done the CSS in a year now. So.
Yeah, I know. And it's so interesting, right? It's kind of like riding a bike. You got to get back on it. And then once you've done it. So here's the thing. The answer to the first question is yes, the custodial parent, you're using your student's login details for the college board, which then gets you to their CSS profile. And that non-custodial, you are indeed going to go in there and you're going to complete that as though you're a student. which means it's really kind of ironic when you get in there. You'll see that there are both required and, with the asterisk again, and those things that are not required, statements or questions that you have to answer. You do have to wait, as I just found out recently with one of my families, where they were anxiously ready to hop in there and start working on the non-custodial account, but the student and his other parent hadn't started their side yet and hadn't put the colleges into the CSS profile. And so it came up and immediately said, hey, this hasn't been done yet. Do you want to proceed? And I said, now let's just wait. So just know that that's the case. When it comes to the address, you're just going to have to follow what it says. Okay. Remember, again, as the non-custodial, you're setting that account up as yourself with your account. Excuse me, with your address, but make sure that you are always following the directions and only filling in things that say the student information versus the parent information. It's really, really important that you do that.
All right. On College Aid Pro under colleges, it shows available merit scholarships. That's true. CAP marks some scholarships even though I didn't click them. Does it mean my child is entitled to them, or who gives out those? Are these with the colleges like, okay, hold on a second. Let me paraphrase. Okay, so this person is basically asking, like, how did this merit scholarship get checked, and how does my child get the scholarship? So what College Aid Pro will do is predict if there's a high probability of your student, based on their GPA and test scores usually, of getting a certain scholarship. It will go ahead and predict that and check that off, and that will be subtracted from your student's net cost for that school, and all the information on CAP. So that doesn't mean that you can't go in and read the list, and if you think there's another one you have a really high likelihood of getting, check it off yourself. To the point about who gives out those scholarships, those come directly from the school. Some of them your student will be thrown into the eligibility pile automatically just by applying. Others, your student will need to have applied and also filled out their financial aid forms. And some schools require separate scholarship applications. So you really have to get on the admissions website for that school and read and find out.
Yeah, because in the system, we only mark scholarships that are likely or are guaranteed. You'll notice we don't mark anything that's competitive. And in fact, there may be a scholarship that's listed there that has no dollar amount next to it. It's because, quite frankly, we don't know what it is. I mean, it's listed, but it's kind of this, this arbitrary amount that could be paid out. So you just unfortunately have to do some additional research with the college in that particular case. We don't want to mislead you as far as giving you any information that's not right. We're trying our best to give you accurate stuff there.
Yep.
Okay, so this is a question for me. Do you have any suggestions on competing schools for Miami of Ohio? So that's Miami University in Oxford, Ohio. Daughter loves the school, and we will likely qualify for need-based aid, but we need to maximize her potential for every dollar she can get. We are out of state. If it matters, the software says 19K was need aid, 19 merit, but even if they stack, Miami could be out of reach. Do you think there's any chance to get this school within within your financial reach? So let me say this to you. I feel your pain. For those of you that don't know, I live in Kentucky, so I'm about an hour from Miami University, and it's referred to as the public Ivy of Ohio. And it's also priced for those of us out of state a little bit like an Ivy. It's not quite that bad, but it's a $65,000 per year school. And so even with the very best scholarships, and I've had a number of students that have applied there and gotten the biggest amount, even then it was maybe half the price. So it was dropping it down to say, $32,000 or something like that the family still had to come up with. And I've even had families say to me before, you mean my daughter could go to the public flagship university in the state and it would be less than that school, even with them giving the biggest money? And the answer is yes. So what you're going to have to do is, since you're already looking at this school as an option, is kind of spread your wings, but maybe look at some other options. I mean, there's some Indiana schools that make some sense. Oh, by the way, you're asking me whether or not I think that they would give any more money, possibly, and the answer is no. They don't do much. Unfortunately, they're not really good when it comes to, in fact, they don't even want you to even bring up the word appeal to them. I can tell you that for a fact. I've talked to them plenty of times. What they offer is what they're going to offer. It's very rare that they're going to make any kind of a difference there. So just be careful. But I spread your wings, look at schools and maybe some of the schools that are in Michigan, not the big boys, not the Michigan states. Well, maybe Michigan states, but not the University of Michigan's for sure. But some of the Indiana schools, although the Indiana schools are lower in price anyway, overall, but they also don't give out a lot of merit because of that. But Alabama, University of South Carolina, which is coming up really fast here. I mean, some of those kinds of schools definitely do. And there's schools out west. I mean, I'll tell you, one that's really caught my attention is Arizona, University of Arizona or Arizona State. Um, some of my families are applying there and getting really sizable scholarship dollars. So you're just gonna have to spread, or spread out a little bit more. So
All right. FAFSA colleges have eliminated the sibling and college discount. I use College Aid Pro software, and the scenario shows significant need-based aid projected for CSS colleges for when our high school senior will be a junior and senior in college. Because our son is 2 years younger than daughter, will CSS colleges change their IM to do away with the sibling and college discount in the future? How do we plan? Well, we don't know. That's a good question. And I think everyone's kind of waiting to see if the CSS schools make any adjustments about that. But I don't have a crystal ball. Do you have a crystal ball, Dan?
no, I don't. I'll tell you what, if we did and we had the opportunity, those schools would be inundated with new applicants that would be willing to apply there. And some schools might really want to get that message out, by the way, Don't be surprised if some schools really aggressively look at that as a way to recruit students to their campuses. But right now, we just don't know. 30 or 40% discount possibly with some schools if they follow that, or let's hope they don't do this. They could drop that whole discounting altogether.
Yep.
Yeah. And that leads right into the next question, by the way. Well, not to take the thunder off of that, but it's the same deal. Unfortunately, there's no way to know what that discount is going to be. So, all right, next one. There's a question on the CSS that asks something like, how much are you willing to, are going to pay for your student's college education, or something to that effect? Yeah, you're absolutely right. How should a parent answer it? Answer it honestly, and whatever you do, it's so interesting. I've had families before that say, well, should we put a really big number on there to show them that we're really serious about being able to pay for school? Hey, if you've got the money sitting in your bank account ready to take care of that because you've done it, well, okay. If you want to show them that there's no reason why you can't take care of your child going to that school, that's one thing. But whatever you do not put yourselves in jeopardy by putting down some number that you cannot realistically pay, because you're really putting yourself into a compromising situation if in the future they indeed look at that number and say, hey, you told us you could afford $40,000 per year, and you're going, well, we really didn't mean that. We can pay 10. So just be super duper careful about that, because you are absolutely right. They're going to ask that question. Um, Look, shoot low. They're going to tell you anyway how much you're going to be paying. So shoot low and then just be prepared for the shock and awe when the number comes rolling in.
Good deal. Okay, my student has a CSS profile. I need one too, right? I fill out the financial aid forms on the CSS. I'm having difficulty getting my own CSS account. Any advice? So you can go in under your student's account and fill out the CSS profile. You might be confusing that with the FSA ID for the FAFSA, where at least one parent and the student have to have their own individual FSA ID in order to sign the FAFSA form, essentially.
Yeah, and don't forget to, if you're a non-custodial parent, yeah, you do indeed. if the colleges require it, you are indeed going to have to go in there and set up your own account. And so you're setting it up like you're a brand new kiddo. I mean, you really are. You're going, you're going to laugh at the questions they ask, but you still have to go ahead and fill it out. And then that sets up that account for you. Let's see here. How are second homes treated in the FAFSA and the CSS profile? If they are vacation rentals, to, wait a minute, to not generate any net profit, then income is not relevant, correct? Is the equity counted? So the answer is that it is considered, because it's a rental property, it's considered a investment property. And as an investment property, it needs to be put down as the value of the equity of that property. And that's, you're going to have that same situation happen on both financial aid forms.
That's right. Okay. This person had a relative that gave, I feel like this must be a continuation from a prior question. The relative gave the younger sibling around $70,000 as a designated gift solely for the sibling. Should we report this on CSS and FAFSA, or can we argue that the $70,000 is intended exclusively for the sibling and should not be considered for the student? If it's the sibling's asset, then it doesn't belong on the CSS or FAFSA for the student. The only caveat to that is if it's a 529. But do you understand this question better than me, Dan?
Well, I just get the sense that what it is they're saying, hey, the younger sibling has 70 grand that's sitting there. Do we have to report it? And so on the FAFSA, no. But I think on the CSS profile, don't they ask for, so I think they ask for sibling assets. So here's, this could really go down a rabbit hole. It's no different than sibling 529 plans, which is what you were just talking about, right? Why don't you explain that a little bit?
So with the sibling 529 plan this is actually new change for the FAFSA. It used to be that you had to report all parent-owned 529s, even if the beneficiary were, your 5 brothers and sisters. All of their 529 values had to go as a parent asset on the FAFSA. Now, the only 529 amount that has to go on the FAFSA it is the parent-owned 529 of that student, where that student is the actual beneficiary. For the CSS, they still asking for sibling 529 amounts though.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I think in this case that even that 70,000 might have to be disclosed in some fashion or another, if it's a required question. That's the question that comes up there. What about traditional IRA contributions? Will they reduce SAI? I don't think so. I don't think so, right? Traditional IRA, not traditional.
No. Hold on, let me read the question, make sure. Will they reduce SAI? No, the traditional ones
Doesn't it flow on the front of the tax return?
Yeah, let me look on the front of the tax return. I know that the contributing pre-tax to an IRA does not give you the same benefit of kind of hiding that money on the FAFSA that the 401ks do. So it's just the way the question is worded made me question that. But I'm going to look up the 1040 because I think it's on the front of the 1040.
Okay.
And while I'm doing that, you can talk about
it. And so this next one, this is a re-ask on the same question, which is, so you're saying that if 23,500 was put in for a 403B, that the FAFSA doesn't consider that in the SAI calculation. That's correct. So you're literally reducing your taxable income. Your adjusted gross income will go down. But the CSS profile has a question on it that says, tell us about contributions that you make to your retirement accounts. And so you do have to do that. Plus the CSS profile has a required question that says, tell us how much you have in your retirement accounts. By the way, the FAFSA does not do that and never has done that. So.
All right, I'm going to have to look up that in a minute.
Okay.
Is this my turn?
Sure, if you want to take it.
And now I'm not sure which one you just read.
It's the one about follow up on the ED question
Oh,
here.
that's the one I need to take. Okay. Yeah, okay, so follow up on ED. If they don't give us money, can the child apply regular application while we are in appeal?
No,
No, that's not
that's
unfortunate.
not the way it works. If you apply ED, you're ED. The only exception is that the college comes back to you and encourage you, or not even, yeah, the college has to come back and encourage you to somehow reapply a different way. You can't just suddenly change your direction as far as what you did there.
No.
Okay. How does FAFSA factor merit scholarships a student earns? Can student apply for both need-based aid and merit scholarships? Absolutely. And the thing that you have to realize though is that the FAFSA has zero impact on your merit scholarships. It only impacts need-based aid. So that you have to just know that going in is that that's the only thing that comes into play. But you have to remember that colleges package their financial aid offers according to where they are on things. That's why there's such a big difference between colleges that meet 100% a need compared to colleges that meet a lower need but maybe have more merit aid that they're able to give out or whatever. So it's totally about packaging in that particular case. But just again, remember again, the only exception might be again for those colleges that are requiring you to submit that stuff for merit scholarships, like we've talked about, like Georgia Tech or like the one I shared tonight, which is with UNC Chapel Hill.
Okay, so back to the question about and now I don't remember exactly how the question was
It was
worded.
about the IRA. Yeah,
Yeah, so that I am not good at multitasking, full disclosure. So I don't see what I'm looking for. But the thing with the IRA is that part of the reason they were able to cut back the number of questions on the FAFSA is they are now requiring you to use this. What's it called? Not the data retrieval tool, but
dum dum dum. The Federal Taxpayer Information (FTI).
yeah. So by doing that, you don't have to, they're trying to get as much of your financial information, especially income information, as they can from your tax return and not require you to have additional fields you have to fill out regarding that. And because when you contribute pre-tax to an IRA, you have recognized income that you then later on write a check, from taxed income into your IRA, and then you get a credit for it on your tax return. I want to say, and again, we don't give tax advice. Can I use
We
that here?
don't. Yeah, they
Um,
just sure could because we're
don't
not a tax
take,
company.
don't take, do your own research, but I do believe that it doesn't, because of that, it doesn't shelter your pre-tax IRA contributions from the FAFSA. I believe.
I absolutely agree with that. I think you're right on that.
So
Yeah. Okay.
8 o'clock, Dan. It's
It's
8:03.
8:03. My gosh, we had a ton of questions tonight, folks. I will
Yeah.
answer this one question. Do CSS schools provide tuition guarantee? You can ask them, but the vast majority of them, no. Now it's going to be something brand new. There are some colleges out there that do it though, so make sure that you do your homework. But Rynda, it's been great doing this with you tonight. And ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us for this fantastic speed hour of Q&A that we've gone through with you. We hope that we've helped you a bunch. We always wish you the very best when it comes to the college process because we know this can be stressful. And don't forget to, always in those more in-depth conversations, reach out and set up those expert meetings with our College Aid pros. We're here to help you, yeah, especially during this wild and crazy time with the delay in the financial aid forms. But thanks so much for coming tonight, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks. Take care, everybody. Good night,
All
Rynda.
right.